Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we have got a good friend and a great guest on, and she raises a profile of grief. She is really talking about grief, loss, all the issues, recovery, and she's a playwright and it's got some exciting things going. So we're going to talk to her about what her take is on the grief and loss world today.
Oh my gosh.
Elizabeth has been on the show before. She's been on our podcast and our cable show. So please just Google Open to Hope and Elizabeth Coplan and you'll find her. So Elizabeth Coplan, we are going to talk with you today about raising the profile of grief. After experiencing 3 losses in less than a year, Elizabeth turned to writing plays focused on this global experience known as death. In 2016, Elizabeth developed the groundbreaking play Grief Dialogues and built the nonprofit Grief Dialogues. She has written other numerous plays, and these are just a few of them: Till Death, Hospice, A Love Story, and Death Doctor. Welcome to our podcast, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you both very, very much. Yes, raising the grief profile today is actually, I don't want to say a daunting task because it's not, in that everybody, I feel right now, is suffering grief. We have individual grief, of course, and right now with the crash on the Potomac, the Los Angeles fires, and so forth, we have a whole lot of collective grief. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or anything, people are suffering through these losses, either personally or, like I said, collectively. So there's a lot to be done in the area of grief and making it okay, as you ladies know, to express your grief. I happen to advocate for expressing it through art. I specifically express it through theater, but there's all kinds of art forms, of course, that people have been showing their grief and channeling their grief into art. In fact, this month in on Grief Dialogues, our Facebook page, we're highlighting various Black actors, singers, artists that have channeled their grief into their art. And it's really incredible. I know this will air later, but you can always go back and check it out. We're always profiling people who fantastic artists.
Elizabeth, I love this. And, if I am someone that has recently had a loss, what are certain ways and different ways that I can channel my own grief through art? Like, what are some of the things people can do?
That's a great question because a lot of people say to me, well, these are amazing artists, and I can barely draw stick figures. And to be honest with you, drawing stick figures or doodling is a form of art. I know a lot of people who took up knitting. I have a good friend right now, a recent widow, who took up knitting, joined a group, knitted a lot of squares that weren't square, but the ladies gently brought her in and now she's knitting squares and together they're putting together a blanket. She never in a million years would have considered herself an artist, but she is, and she's part of a collective art group in a way. So it doesn't have to be, painting the Mona Lisa. It just has to be something quite frankly, maybe something you do with your hands or your voice. Maybe it's singing. Maybe it's singing along to a song that really touches your heart in the shower, in your home, in your car. Again, it's just connecting with art in some way, music, theater, whatever, in some way that you can share it with yourself, maybe share it with others, but that's not criteria. It's for you to start with.
We had Bessel Vanderkorp on our show, and one of the things that he talked about was improv. How acting. Talk about that. I mean, and
Oh,
anybody can go do it, right?
yeah, anybody actually here in Costa Rica, where I am right now, there's an improv group that my husband has joined, and that's a great way to just have fun with acting and acting out, and really still drawing on your personal experiences. That just really helps. Of course, improv, a lot of times it's funny, but then in a way, some of the things we experience is funny.
What do you think's happening with death in America?
I'm starting to see a little bit more of the death positive focus coming in a little bit more. But no one seems to stop and realize that with all our differences, because right now we are a divided nation, but with all our differences, the one thing that will happen to all of us is death.
Yeah.
And chances are it is also grief, unless you're someone who doesn't care about anyone, anytime, no matter, no how, you will experience grief when you lose someone you care about. And that is universal. That doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter your status in life or your political party or the color of your skin. That's just a given. So I feel like if we can come together over an understanding that death is really just maybe the final chapter of our life on earth, but it is a culmination and it's a positive thing. And quite frankly, I think it should be celebrated like we celebrate birth. And I'm starting to see more of the death positive movement happening, not as fast as I would like.
I do have a little concern about the
Mhm.
celebration of death. Only this.
Ah, okay.
Does
Mhm.
that stop some people from really tapping their emotions and talking about, we have to celebrate it, so we can't talk about how much it hurts because we
Right,
have to have balloons and bubbles and when I'm lonely, I'm lost, I miss that person desperately. Am I able to talk about that now? Or will my friends say, oh, let's celebrate. Let's talk only about the good things.
right. Whatever you're feeling is justified. Whatever you want to say is justified. If it's your loss, you should be able to say and do anything. It by celebration isn't, when you celebrate a life, it doesn't mean that everything is positive. Um, so I've been to a funeral where the eulogy was all glowing about this man who was a terrible man. That's not good either. I think it needs to be based in reality. I like you, I do not like it when someone says to me, "Oh, look at the bright side," or "they're in a better place," or any one of those platitude kind of sentences. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, one of the things that I have noticed, and I'm not a therapist, counselor, researcher, this is just anecdotally, that people who go to, know their death is coming and they have an acceptance of that and a calmness that comes with that. Their loved ones rally around them and they feel that love. And so often the grief they feel after the death is not as hard or as brutal as a death where someone has been taken away tragically, or someone who really, you know, fought so hard that they couldn't really love the people around them. They couldn't share those last moments with love. I have a good friend in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact, whose husband, once he realized the pancreatic cancer was not curable, the last month of his life, he really rallied around bringing people around him, and people were actually going, "Oh my gosh, I came to comfort him, and he comforted us." And then when he did pass, people said that was the most beautiful, beautiful life and ending of life.
Well, Elizabeth, I have to say that we can celebrate life and grieve their death together. Those two things
Absolutely.
can exist together. And that's one of the things I love about your place. The last one that you just did in New York,
Mhm,
the one where we walked through
mhm.
different rooms and had different experiences. What was the name of that?
That was Grief Dialogues, the Experience.
Grief Dialogues, the Experience. That's what I loved about it.
Mm,
One minute we were very emotional and doing something that was emotive and bringing us back to our own loss. And the next minute we were, you know, in ritual, hanging ornaments on a tree. And, there was a lot of, you captured all of the emotions of grief. We're happy that they were alive and that we had those experiences. We're sad that they're not here. We're laughing one minute, we're crying one minute. I mean, that's the reality of when someone is gone, and you really captured that. It was a really cool experience. I love what
right.
you did with that.
I,
Great. Well, thank you for that.
yeah,
There were 9 different playwrights, and they brought their various experiences to the stage, to the rooms, because we did, it was immersive. And that's to me what grief is all about. It's all those things.
I
It's when
love
I
your
say,
word immersive. That's what
mm,
I think is important here. People were actively
Yeah.
engaged. In the
yes.
theater, when you go to the theater, you are actively engaged. You cry when certain things happen. It breaks your heart. And the theater does that for us. It
Right.
takes us to those places that other people know, and we suddenly are there, and people don't like to talk about it, and you're there with the playwright. I mean, if you understand
Right.
grief and loss and you understand it, so it's an experience. I love the experiential thing that you did. I want to just read what I have here about it because I think it's important for here. The experience is there are 9 short plays by 9 different playwrights depicting a variety of dying and death or grief stories, poems and by talented poets, followed by an interactive audience discussion. And so you're really moving people around and then having a discussion, which becomes peer support. And Heidi and I
Right.
know that peer support and information are the 2 things that help you with your grief and loss. You do both.
Right. Yes, yes. And it's then the experience too, just so you know, is you're right, it brings out all kinds of emotions and experiences from the audience members. We do have a grief counselor that's available there. So if someone is struggling with something they've seen, they know this person's there. They can go and sit. That's the other part. There's another separate room. They can go and talk. So it's very free. If you need support, physical, we're there. We have somebody on set, so to speak. Um, and yet, and other people just kind of go through and feel their feelings. But then we advocate at the end with some poetry and so forth, that people, if they want to share those feelings, they can do so too. And kind of an open arena with poetry, like I said, and candles. So that's really, so we kind of, well, I don't want to say we tie it up because we don't, because grief's ongoing, but it does give us a moment. The one thing I will say too on the grief experience that we did in New York was there were some connections made at that showing afterwards when we were all talking that those people probably in real life would never have met except at that play. And I know of at least 2 people who are still in touch and have become friends over their shared experiences. Pretty amazing.
That
That's
is amazing.
lovely. Now talk about where you're doing this. When are you doing it again? Are you doing anything on the internet with it that people can see?
Right. Actually, we actually filmed the plays, and we're putting together a regular film of it. It's a combination of the film of the plays with audience, and then we did film it without an audience. So it's really going to be a lovely film. We're almost done with it, and that will be made available to anyone who would like to see it.
There's so much going on that you're going to want to go to her website and figure out what she's doing now for you.
Right. Yes. Griefdialogues.com is my website. And you can go on there and there's all kinds of stuff. We also have a short film called My Guardian Angel that's coming out in April. It was written and directed by Naya Chambliss, who is 15 years old. And it's
Wow.
about childhood cancer. And it is extraordinary. And we also have a musical called Let's Write a Musical about an elderly man who gets a terminal diagnosis, and he and his wife write a musical. I'm so excited about this piece that I have agreed to become the producer of it. At griefdialogues.com, you can email me at elizabethcoplan@gmail.com. It's all on the website too. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. I'd love to have anybody and everybody contact me about what might be happening in your area, because every day
I
it
love
seems like
it.
something new is happening.
Elizabeth, you are amazing at Heidi. Doesn't she help raise the profile of grief in the world? It's amazing.
Absolutely. You are doing so many incredible things and you are so creative. And I love that you're at the Portland Institute because we love Bob Niemeyer. He was on our board for years. So yes, you're doing so many things. I would give a shout out to anything you're doing. Please go and see some of these things that Elizabeth is doing because they are really incredible.
They'll
Thank
take
you.
a
Thank you.
wonderful space that you'll recognize if you're having grief loss and are looking for help in recovery. Well, Elizabeth, thank you again for being on our show. So great to see you. Hello to your husband.
Thank you. And hello to all your husbands. And thank you again. It's always an honor to be here, ladies.
Yeah.
Thanks,
want-
Elizabeth. It was great seeing you, and you really are raising the vibration and building awareness for finding hope after loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Heidi and I always want to remind you, thank you for being on our show today, Elizabeth, and thank everybody for watching it and joining us. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.